Hey all, as we're approaching in June of 2022, there's lots of uncertainty and conversation about the housing market in the United States and what's going to go on with prices up, down, all around. But there's one question I don't hear being addressed with my real estate agent friends, economists, or anyone out there, which the big question to me is, how did we from 2020 to 2022 set massive records in price appreciation and real estate inflation? In this video, I want to break down three big questions. Question number one, and I wrote it down here, is where did the money come from? Question number two is, where did all these buyers come from? And then question number three was, why was there such an imbalance in the supply and demand, creating this record-setting price appreciation? So I look forward to addressing all three of those and going deeper in this video. Growth. All right, let's dive in. The big question number one, I wrote down it in my notes here, which is, where did all this money come from that fueled this aggressive, unbelievable price appreciation? I remember talking to all of my coaching clients in all the different markets across the country, and they're like, I just helped a buyer write an offer $100,000 over the list price. Or a listing agent said, I just got an offer accepted $250,000 over list price. Some of my clients in like the markets like DC or the Bay Area, they were like, I just got $750,000 over the list price acceptance. It's like, well, where did all this money come from? So I wrote down five really interesting insights to kind of help us to understand how this happened. Number one I wrote down was immediately after March COVID lockdowns, that's when we saw a lot of stimulus money coming out into the economy and into people's hands. We saw a lot of kind of debt forgiveness and people stopping paying back debts with no recourse. And so really what we just saw was we saw more money kept into the hands of people out there in the United States. So their money reserves increased because of the stimulus and because of COVID. That's number one. Number two, since we were all locked down in our houses, I don't know about you guys, but our spending habits actually reduced a lot. And we saw reports that the savings rates started skyrocketing. So most people were saving way more money because they were just spending less because we were all locked down. There was nothing for us to do during that window of time with COVID. Number three, interest rates went literally below 3%. Now that's historical lows. That just means that the cost of getting a loan was so low that our monthly payments were actually going down even as prices were going up, increasing affordability. That was such a key factor. Number four was we saw the stock market really taking off in 2020 and 2021. It soared. So in general, we saw people just felt wealthier, and in areas like the Bay Area and in big, kind of very expensive markets, we saw a lot of money coming out of their stock portfolios to put down on the down payment. So that was happening a lot with a lot of my clients in some of these very expensive markets. And then number five was, as home prices were increasing, the equity that homeowners had when they sold their house, they were moving big chunks of equity forward to the purchase of the next home. So when you really look at all five factors I wrote down, this gave buyers a stronger down payment and way more purchasing power without significantly increasing their monthly payments. So that allowed for massive price appreciation and acceleration. All right, so let's take a look at the next topic, which is, where did all these buyers come from? Who are these people buying all these houses, and how'd there get to be so many of them? When I was selling houses in like 2015 in San Diego, it was so crazy when we would get like 2 or 3 offers on a house, and it was like, whoa, I negotiated 2 to 3 offers on a house. My marketing was amazing. I'm so cool as a listing agent. And then here we are in 2020, maybe June, July, August, all of a sudden we were seeing 9, 10. In some of the markets we were seeing in 2021 in February, we were seeing like 15 offers. We were seeing 30 offers on a house. It was insane. Where were all these buyers coming from? So there's 5 things that I kind of observed as where this extra buyer demand came from. Number one, this is interesting. In 2019, there was way less home sales. And so if you were a real estate agent, go take a look at the stats in 2019. We saw significantly less home sales, i.e. less buyers bought homes. So I remember this time period, one of my mentors, Bruce Norris, was asking a lot of economists and a lot of very bright people, well, why did we see less homes sell in 2019? And there was no good answer because economics were really strong. But there was one thing that I remembered distinctly, and he said the problem is a lot of media and economists and even real estate agents were saying the same thing in 2019. They're kind of telling everybody, hey, every 10 years, the real estate market turns around. So this was general narrative in 2019 that was basically saying the market's going to turn around. Guys, are we noticing a little bit of that narrative right now here in May or June of 2022, which causes what? Buyers to back off and to be hesitant. So that's kind of what we're experiencing right now in 2022. So in 2019, what happened is for every reason a buyer would have bought a home, they decided not to. So then COVID hits in March of 2020, and it seemed like at that point, any reason to make a move and buy a home seemed to cause buyers to get off the fence and jump into action. So I wrote down, if you needed more space, you needed a yard, you needed an office, of course, right? Get out of a downtown environment, get closer to family, or you can move now because of your Zoom job. It just seemed like any good reason caused buyers to jump into the market. So if we think about that, in 2019, less people bought, and then boom, here we are. Here's a new supply of highly motivated, excited buyers to do something. Number two, rental prices were skyrocketing. So in 2020, 2021, we saw rental prices going off the charts. So when you looked at the low cost of a loan, the low cost of money, for a lot of people, it didn't make sense for them to keep renting, and actually buying really technically made a lot of financial sense. So we saw a lot of people coming out of the rental market into the home purchase market. Then number three, this is an interesting one. The institutional buyer came into the market and added an entire new buyer pool at a big level. I did some Google and I just found a little thing, and it just said Redfin reported that in the fourth quarter of 2021, 18.4% of all the properties that were for sale were purchased by an institutional buyer. So in the fourth quarter of 2021, almost 20% of the purchases was an institutional buyer. So where did all this buyer demand come from? Well, there's one big reason. Number four, vacation home purchasing. Wow. The vacation home market took off in 2020 and 2021, rightfully so, right? We had, if you owned a home, you had a ton of equity. You can refinance and take a bunch of money out at a really, really, really low rate, and you can go buy yourself a vacation home. And with Airbnb and VRBO going really, really well for people, that was also supporting people to financially be able to buy these vacation homes and turn a vacation home into a profit center. So that also added way more buyers into the market. Number five, and at last, the long-awaited massive demographic group, the millennials, started buying in 2020 and in 2021. For a lot of the real estate industry observers and economists, they're all talking about when were the millennials going to come in and buy homes? Well, it happened. Research showed that millennials had a high percentage of jobs in COVID-safe sectors, like data companies and tech companies. And number two is that their average income as a group was the highest of any other generation. So we see a huge demographic group who's doing really well with their careers and making lots of money, having babies, and creating household formations right here at that spot, adding a massive buyer pool. The final question to address is why the severe imbalance in supply and demand. There's one issue that really was the problem. Inventory, the number of new homes coming for sale. There's two reasons why the supply of homes for sale was constrained, and then it actually got worse during COVID. So let's take a look at the two reasons why, with all that big buyer demand, all that money, we saw massive amounts of price appreciation. For all my real estate agent friends out there, we complained about this nonstop. We were challenged with this nonstop. We had way more buyers than we had homes for sale, and we were begging people to put their home on the market to be able to supply the demand with what they needed, and it was a challenge. There's two reasons that I did some research on I thought about. Number one is after the big real estate crash of 2008, the home builders got destroyed in that environment. And so we kept hearing report after report after report that the home builders in that decade from 2010 to 2020, home builders, and in California, we have huge amounts of expensive regulation on home builders. So, along the coast, a lot of the expensive regulation was really keeping a lot of builders out of the market from adding more supply to the existing demand. Number two, once COVID kicked in, March 2020, fear and lockdown basically put paralysis on a lot of homeowners. We were, for an entire decade, from 2012 to 2022, we had super low inventory because of the lack of builder supply. Then we hit COVID and everyone was fearful and scared, and it drove the inventory even lower in almost all of the markets. So we went from low to extreme low, which then, here we are, my friends. There's your imbalance, which caused home prices to fly off the shelf, which is where we land today in June of 2022. In summary, I wrote this down. Does it make sense that since June of 2020 to the beginning of 2022, on average across the U.S., home price appreciation has been breaking record state after state, town after town, which was one of the greatest real estate wealth gains in record? So here we are, my friends. It's June of 2022, and that's how we got here. If you'd like to watch my video on how I explain today's market and kind of what my projections are, take a look at this video. I'll put it up right here on how I explain it. For my real estate agent friends out there, if you haven't watched the video that I did on the do's and don'ts of explaining the housing market, I'll put that video right over here for you guys so you can check that out. All right, have an awesome day.